right, locked in. Welcome in, Steve Bonham, Mason Cameron, Vishaal Gupta. How you guys doing?
Awful.
Better than the Steelers
Terrible.
defense, right?
Dalvin is
even going on.
absolutely cooking me right now in fantasy, and I'm not having a good time.
It's 23-0 at halftime in the Thursday night game. Wait, what? Oh, Dalvin Cook just scored another touchdown. He's just can't be stopped, even out of the locker room, out of control. Out of control.
No time on the clock, and he's still putting points up.
Just against all odds. There he is. But let's look at this last week. Look, we finally did it, boys.
Yeah.
Let's go,
Cheer.
boys.
We want to get some happiness.
Let's go.
There it is. We went 6-3 overall last week, but more importantly, we went 3 for 3 on the locks. So finally on the board with the locks. Finally. And also we went 6-3. Each one of us went 2-1 on the card. We all had good ones and then one that just went sideways on us. For me, it was Jamar Chase missed his over by 13 yards because they didn't throw him the ball for like 3 quarters after he had that terrible drop in the first. And I forget what the rest of you guys had.
I had Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson somehow went over.
Just a hair, and like, you know what? I'll take it because it's still, it shouldn't have been that way.
Right.
But that's how it goes.
The process was right.
Right.
And V, I thought you were close.
I had Najee Harris on the under, and I think it was close until the Pittsburgh's last drive to go ahead.
Yeah. It was 94 yards or something, and you went under, and he hit 106 or something like that.
Yeah.
It was real
good
close,
for like 3.5 quarters.
Too bad he couldn't have, done what he was doing tonight.
Yeah, right. That's kind of what I was expecting. But
what he had done the previous 3 weeks. Yeah. All right, let's kick it off. Mason, what do you got for week 14?
Oh, all right. So besides the utter pain of Dalvin Cook cooking my fantasy teams,
the heartbreak, yeah.
So for starters, I have Jerry Jeudy, and this is a little more wishful thinking for one of my fantasy teams that is going to be forced to start him this week. But the Broncos have been a bit hit or miss on offense in recent weeks. Well, really, kind of all season long.
It's been mostly
missed. But you know what? I have a friend that's a Cowboys fan, so I can always bank on that, and it always makes me feel better. So. They've pretty much been hit or miss all season, but this matchup I think is a positive one that I don't want to ignore. The offense as a whole, Judy's numbers have fluctuated, but his target share has remained strong. Since returning from injury in week 8, Jeudy has 30 targets, and that actually leads the offense. This week against Detroit, we talk about it a lot. Detroit's not very good. And before I drag them, I'm going to shout out Jack. Congratulations, Jack, and the Detroit Lions on their first win. I actually am wearing my stash today in honor of Jack.
There you go.
Send our kind regards to Jerry and the boys for doing that one, Jack. But all in all, back to business of dragging the Lions. The Lions secondary is just not very good. In fact, they're really, really bad. They allow the 10th most yards to wide receivers. They've allowed a 100-yard wide receiver in each of the last 2, including Justin Jefferson, who is also currently exploding. Last week, he popped for about 182. I really think JJ and JJ are very comparable players, and this seems like a matchup that's going to be an easy enough number to hit, even if the score gets way out of hand, like the spread kind of thinks it will. I think it might be a little bit closer, but anyway, this is a super reasonable number for him to hit. And I like it over here, 51.5. Kyle Pitts is my next one. I'm going under 55.5. And so I know V actually also has a line here, I think, for Matt Ryan. And the thing is their offense as a whole is just not clicking. Like, they have some good pieces. Like, Pitt is an amazing player, but his performance in this offense just hasn't, really been that great. He's only surpassed this line in 5 of the 12 games this season, and he's missed it in each of the last 3. This week they have Carolina, and the Carolina D has been good this year, even though they've kind of not been quite as good as they were early on in the season, and their record isn't really that great, but they are still pretty stout defense there. They allow the 8th fewest yards to tight ends this year, and the Last game, they held Mike Gesicki to 17 total yards for the Dolphins, and he tends to be a pretty big part of their offense. I liked the under here, and I think V's going to elaborate a little bit more on the struggles of this Falcons offense a little bit later on here. Last but not least, I have so just for a little background for all the people at home. I had some trouble
Inside
today.
baseball.
I had some trouble today making my final pick, and poor Steve had to hop back and forth a few times. So we're gonna thank Steve ahead of time for putting this Mike Evans pick in here for me. Truth be told, I was burned on Mike Evans' touchdown prop in my player props article this last week. And I've come to find out that I'm generally never wrong. I'm just early. And that's where I sit with this one too. I think that I was just
what a weird way to pat yourself on the back.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that it was just a little bit early here, and I really like Evans again this week. So the big problem is that Mike Evans, people just forget about Mike Evans. His line of 59.5 yards is about 12 yards lower than Chris Godwin, and the touchdown props tend to lean towards Lenny. So it's almost like people just forget that Mike Evans is an actual dominant wide receiver one on a really good offense. He's passed this line 8 times this season, including 3 of the last 4. And this week against the Bills seems like a matchup that you should stray away from, because the Bills have been extremely stingy defense all year long, especially in the secondary. But my big thing is that they just lost Trey White to a torn ACL, and this leaves this defense shorthanded. In against, average defense or average offenses, they could probably still hang, but they're going to have a lot of trouble matching up with how many weapons Tampa Bay puts out there on any given play. And that's going to create some one-on-ones for a guy like Evans. I think he's going to be in for a big game that not a lot of people are expecting. And I'm super interested to see the Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde post-game presser after they get cooked in this one. So that's going to be entertaining.
All right, Vishaal, what do you got this week?
All right, I'm going to start with Travis Kelsey over 74.5 receiving yards. Kelsey has definitely not had as good of a season as he's had the past few years. Definitely a down year overall for him. But when he plays the Raiders, he always turns it on. Over the last 15 games that Kelsey has played against the Raiders, he's averaging 80 receiving yards. And when these two teams played in Week 10, he had 119 receiving yards, which was a season high. The Raiders just cannot stop Patrick Mahomes in the passing game whenever they play. Mahomes should have an easy time against the secondary, and Kelsey should be one of the many beneficiaries of his good day. So I'm going to take the over on Kelsey. Second, I'm going to take over 59.5 receiving yards for Jarvis Landry. When I initially hit this line, it was actually 48.5. It weirdly jumped 11 yards within like a matter of hours.
They had to get so many people on the over for it to jump that far that fast.
Yeah, there was a bunch of line jumping too. I think Lamar Jackson's line dropped 10 yards within a matter of hours as well. So it's kind of all over the place today. But I think this over is still good at 59.5. When these two teams played 2 weeks ago, Landry had 111 receiving yards. And I think the big story from last week was all of the injuries the Ravens are facing in their secondary. Marlon Humphrey just went down. They don't have Marcus Peters. I mean, you can go down and down the list. I don't even know who they're starting this week. Cleveland doesn't have the greatest passing game, but when you're going up against practice squad DBs, you'd think Jarvis Landry could hit this mark pretty easily. So I'll take over 59.5 receiving yards. And then finally, Matt Ryan under 241.5 passing yards. Like Mason said, I also had a line on this game. This is a weird line. This just does not make sense for a variety of reasons, starting with Matt Ryan just hasn't been very good the last few weeks. He's gone under this number 3 out of his last 4 games. And when these two teams met earlier in the season, Ryan only had 146 passing yards. But the bigger reason why this doesn't make sense is how good Carolina has been against the pass this season. They've actually only given up more than 241 passing yards once this season, and that was against Minnesota back in like week 6. Other than that, they've only had 2 other games where they've even given up more than 200 passing yards. So they've only given up more than 200 passing yards 3 times this season, and yet this line is 241.5. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. This number should have been closer to 200, if not less than 200. It seems way too high, and I'm just going to smash the under on this one.
All right. Last and maybe least, I don't know. I'm always unconfident about my picks. Taylor Heineke, 246.5. I am taking the under against Dallas. This line confuses me slightly. He had a hot streak for a little bit there in the middle of the season, but he has not even been close to this line since week 10. He's averaging 208 yards per game, and that includes 223 yards against the Seahawks over the last 3 weeks. And the Seahawks allow the second most passing yards in the league. So matchups don't get much better than that, and he still failed to reach this line. The Cowboys are giving up 228 yards per game since their bye, so that's significantly less than this. The only thing I could think of is that they have given up 287 per game over their last 3, but most of that was to Patrick Mahomes and then Derek Carr in the overtime game on Thanksgiving. So I don't know. For me, this number is too high. Heineke has been on a team that is more efficient running the ball against a Cowboys defense that just cannot stop anybody right now. I think they're going to run the ball effectively, and they're going to continue to win games that way and just let Heineke throw the underneath stuff and not even get close to this number. That is not a typo, by the way. I did not accidentally put Russell Wilson in the 2 spot 2 weeks in a row. That is almost the exact same line, and I am taking the under again. Yeah, I understand that he just barely got me the under last week, but I have seen no reason to justify this number since he has returned from the injury. He is still at this point through 4 games averaging 211.5 passing yards per game. And I guess maybe it's the opponent because it's Houston, but I know Houston's hot garbage, but they're still only allowing 7.7 yards per pass attempt this season. And Russ is averaging about 31 pass attempts per game. So that comes out to 234. If he hits his average amount of pass attempts and the Texans basically play him like they've played all season, then he doesn't hit this number. The only teams that have actually gone over on the Texans this year are like Josh Allen, who barely went over, Kyler Murray, who barely went over. They've held Carson Wentz under twice. Sam Darnold went over when he was hot at the beginning of the season in like week 3. But other than that, they've actually been giving up more yardage on the ground, and teams have been blowing them out and just running out the clock. So I'm going to confidently stick with the under on Russ once again this week. And I'm going back to the Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski combo. This week, I've gone to the other side, the Gronk side. Gronk has played in 6 full games this season. In 5 of those 6 games, he has at least 4 receptions for 55 yards. Per game, Gronk is averaging 7.5 targets, 5.5 receptions, and 72.7 yards. That is absolutely bananas. Fun fact, in his career against Buffalo, he averages 7.5 targets, 4.5 catches, and 71.3 yards. So basically, the same line he's putting up on average this year is what he typically does against Buffalo. And the line is only 53.5. I think he easily hits this one here.
Yep.
All right, so those are our picks. Since we actually were successful last week, does that mean it's back on me here?
That is actually exactly what our Uno reverse for anybody that was following along at home.
Mm-hmm.
Our Voodoo Magic Uno reverse card worked, and that is why we won our lock. You're welcome.
Putting
Steve?
the pressure on me. All right, so I'm going to go with Heineke on the under.
Heineke on the under. I like that. Let's see. I'll go ahead and go with my guy Gerald Judy this week over.
All right.
I'll follow you, Steve, with quarterback under by taking Matt Ryan under 241.5.
All right. Well, right now it's at 231.5.
Oh my goodness gracious! Why did
Because,
these
like,
guys
people-
listen
They
to
took
me?
all of
people
these.
Wait till
leave you.
after I submit my pick to listen to what I'm saying. I'm
Look,
still gonna take the under. This
yeah, I
way
was going to
too
say,
high.
you said the line should be closer to 200. So
Yeah,
I
I'll
feel
still
like you're
take the
still
under.
good with the 231.
I just like my extra wiggle room, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Things
Of course.
happen.
Of course. Who doesn't? All right. So that is all set. Those are our picks for the week. Again, if you want to help us out, if you love the work we're doing here, importantnonsense.com is where you can find everything, but patreon.com/importantnonsense. It gives you access to all of our sports betting content, especially from these gentlemen. Everything that they do on the website is behind that. It's only $3. I mean, you could do it. You get that back just by hitting one of these. You're totally fine. Yeah, hitting one of these pick'ems on Underdog pays for basically a full season's access to importantnonsense.com. So totally worth it. $1 gets you into the Discord to ask the start sits. We have the picks that you guys make in the Discord. So if you're part of that $3 tier, then you get access to all that. Right now, Vishaal, number 2 against the spread on Fantasy Pros, number 5 on the over-under line, and number 4 on the money line. Top 5 in all 3 categories.
Going for that
And
clean sweep. I got 5 weeks left.
Mason still reigning supreme, number 1 on the money line. Still 51-16 on the season. 76% stout. Untouchable up there.
I'm just trying to be like B. I'm just trying to
He's
get
an
like
inspiration to all of us, really. But yeah, if you want these guys' information and their picks that they put in the Discord every week, like I said, patreon.com/importantnonsense. Join that tier. Come join in on the conversation there. We appreciate everybody watching. Play along at your own risk. And until next week, keep up the nonsense.